Hey YouTube, this is Mike, and I just wanted to share a short little snippet from this episode that I really enjoyed. However, if you want to listen to the full episode, either scroll down this post or head to mikejamesreid.com/podcast for the full episode. Thanks and enjoy.
I think entitlement's a real issue. Issue myself included. I've gone through phases where you have this inflated sense of self-worth and this ego associated. You may have had some wins in some area, in certain local bubbles or communities. You'll be put up on a pedestal and you're amazing. You do all that. Entitlement is the thing that kills you, because you end up being real complacent with that entitlement. And I'm not saying that, I think, I'm proud of what I've done. I'm really glad that I've contributed to doing good things, and the work that I've started up is still going today. And I think I'm happy with that. But I think the thing I found that's probably the most humbling thing is just when you start putting your focus beyond yourself, and the work that you do is not intrinsic, it's external. What's the word? Intrinsic and extrinsic.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. And you start that external locus of control. It's like, rather than the internal you have the internal locus of control rather than the external, because you know that it's not that you're contributing to a greater vision of what it is. And so, I had a bit of a big pivot. It's funny, I pivoted my vision. When I was younger with ICEA, it was inspiring young people, reconciliation inspired by young people was the vision of ICEA, which was really, I was like the leader of that. I created that organisation. My whole thing was that. So then, for me, leaving ICEA was like, what's this next thing going to be? What's my vision for me personally as a person? And I had to sit down and meditate on that a lot, because I was thinking, well, how can it be broader than just the reconciliation piece? Like, what do I get really inspired by? And it's like inspiring people and businesses to become aware of their magnificence and help them share it. So that's kind of like my guiding light now. And I think if I didn't have that and get drawn to daily, that's like my mantra. I think I get pulled into a lot of the noise out there around making X number of dollars, or doing, creating X venture, or this, that, and the other. Because things do change and evolve. And as long as I get this clear vision, which is quite vague, it draws me to that. And then I don't get too caught up in my own world where I'm killing it and comparing myself to others.
You mentioned contribution. How do you think about that? Is that a big part of your mission in life, is around that, or?
I think, I'm not saying I feel my life is more normal. When I say normal, I think it's more mainstream to Australian white Anglo-Saxon privileged white male, where I'm working in a business, you got job security, you're doing all this work, and not being your entrepreneur, doing your own work, or working as a non-for-profit business, connecting with all peoples from different walks of life in the Indigenous space necessarily. Because a lot of people do what I'm doing. So understanding how previously, when I was running a non-for-profit, it was like all my work was really contribution. You're adding directly a lot of social outcomes and benefits from your work. And then now I'm working in a big, we set up this startup and it's turned into a quite large business. And now it's a private business. So our purpose is to make profit. If we don't make profit, we don't exist. But then we do have a lot of social aspects of our business, which is getting people into work. I'll go into that in more detail later, but the contribution aspect, I've started thinking about that a lot more. It's like, how do you get contribution to a greater vision than yourself, than like, say, your core work, and externally where there's no acknowledgement. Like, say, when you work in a business and you do some contributing in your workplace, being a mentor to another person in your business and that ecosystem, that can be a form of contribution. Or some people feel that they want that contribution outside of their business ecosystem, outside of their whole life, where they may be working in a migrant refugee, humanitarian people on humanitarian visas, and supporting people integrating into our society, or something like so far removed from their normal way of being. I don't think there's any one way to do contribution well. It's around, are you giving and unconditionally giving? And that word unconditionally giving is that you're giving something and not expecting anything in return. And I think in a lot of, giving programs, there's I give you this, I get this back. And I think there's, layers to be laid back there around is that, if people get vibing off that, that's awesome. And the people are better off. But sometimes if you have that giving and that contribution with the expectation you'll get acknowledgement, significance, that's something that I think people need to unpack it a bit more.
Do you feel you contribute now more than ever, or has it been a seasonal thing throughout your life?
I feel... honestly, I don't feel like if I was to do a life wheel, my contribution is probably lower than it usually is. I think it totally goes in phases. For me, it does. I think it's reflective. I think life's not a straight line. I need to continually check in and reflect on myself. Where am I at with all these different areas of my life? I've got my family. Is my contribution just to making sure my brothers and sisters are having a good time? My cousins are actually getting through university. Actually, I really care. I value putting my family being together. I need to be there as a, contributing family member. And I see that's part of contribution. And there's people who maybe hearing this and they go, that's just family. It's not contribution. But, when you got only X number of period of time, you can only allocate time to certain things. And, I feel like I can contribute unconditional love in that. And I get a lot of fulfillment out of that. But then other times I'm so gung-ho, I'm working, staying up all night, helping this non-for-profit do a big fundraiser for an initiative they're doing. And I'll do that for months on end. And then other times it'll be big lull and I'll just go dips and flows. I think that's life.
Yeah, I feel like the wheel of life carries so many ebbs and flows, and that I feel like the fantasy I've got in my life is that, the wheel of life's perfectly in balance. And I feel like this is probably a fantasy that a lot of people have, which is, my life's not right or I'm not doing it right until such time as I've got all the things in balance. And the question I'm asking is, do you think there's ever a time where it's all in balance, or is that just a fantasy that should get thrown away, that should be, shattered?
Yeah, I like that. I think it's that dichotomy, the good, the bad. And I think, the polarity of the two, you can't appreciate the good without the bad. If it's all just smooth sailing, what's the saying? You never made a good sailor in calm waters, I think it's not reasonable to suggest that everything is off balance. I think that kind of suggests you're not having enough variety in your life. And, I think it's really important to kind of, if you're not getting, I think as a younger person, you're going to have more variance. What I've observed with people I mentor and connect with, the life wheel, for example, I do it with a young person, it varies a lot more because they're thinking a lot more instant gratification, where their head's at right there. But then you'll get a wiser, older person like a dad who's probably living a flourishing life, or a mum living a flourishing life, and it takes a lot more things for them to move their dial down or up out of 10 or whatever the metrics are, because they kind of see things in a bigger picture. They've seen a lot. They realise, I'm going to get through this. Whereas young people, they'll tend to be a lot more reactive and say, if they break up with a boyfriend, all of a sudden their life's or girlfriend, and all of a sudden their life's just rattled and they're hanging out at a low area. Whereas, when you get older, it's all this stuff is just noise.